Hello and welcome to Bookish and Unbalanced, the podcast that talks about the good, the bad, the ugly, and the beautiful of mental health in the queer book community. I'm Adrienne J. Smith.
I'm Amy Spencer.
And I'm Katie Trapp.
Amy forgot their name for a minute. From authors to editors, publishers, readers, and reviewers, and narrators, we all have a state of mental health and we neglect to talk about it. Or worse yet, we are ashamed to talk about it. So let's break the stigma. On today's episode, we're interviewing Alicia from Alicia Reviews, who spends a lot of her time supporting authors in the sapphic book community, and I am so grateful for you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
I was so excited when you agreed to do this. I'm not going to lie. I was giddy and I messaged them too. And I was like, yes, let's go.
Well, I was grateful to be, I was actually very happy that you asked me to be a part. So this is my second podcast I've done. So it's something new.
Well, yeah, you did Aunt Georgia Lee's, right?
Yes. And that was my first time and I was really nervous. So my wife told me, not to be nervous because, it could be nerve-wracking to talk about yourself, I guess.
I haven't listened to the podcast yet, but I've definitely have it checkmarked to go listen to hers because she's interviewed some fantastic people already.
Yes. And I had a great time with her and it was a good conversation.
Good. Well, to get us started, can you tell us a little bit about yourself for those people who might not know you?
Sure. Hi, my name is Alicia. I am my page is Alicia Reviews, and my primary focus is to support the indie authors. It came to be because I was reading a book by Deja Elise called The Bluest Christmas, and I was on Goodreads looking through the reviews, and someone stated that we needed to support this author and just get her out there more, and people didn't know or weren't aware of her. And that's kind of what started it. And I wanted to support her. So I did a review. And then I was thinking, what is another way I could support authors? So I started doing videos and different things of that nature. And now it's kind of has grown into my little obsession where I'm always looking for new and innovative, new ways to support the authors visually. Sometimes I read a book and I can hear a song or different things of that nature to kind of translate to different readers what the book is about. So I do those promos to help the authors and the community as a whole, and also bring more awareness to authors of color, which I feel like they need more support as well.
Absolutely. And again, I think it was Aunt Georgia Lee who started the new website. Wasn't it? Remember?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, Miss Aunt Georgia Lee just started a new website that is supporting women of color, Hispanic women, Indian women, Indigenous women, Asian women, and African American women. Just all women, just so that they more have a central place to go to. I was in a little meeting a couple months ago on TikTok where there was a lot of different reviewers in a room, and people were saying, we don't know where to get any sapphic African American books. And I'm like, what? There's so many different African Americans. So I started spitting out names, and also Tuesday Harper did this amazing list of all these different African American sapphic authors, from fiction to fantasy to anything you're looking for. And I shared that, and people, I mean, they were like, we don't even know. I put, do you guys know who Fiona Zed is? They said, we don't know who she is. I said, you don't know who Fiona Zed is? So I was kind of shocked. I think that it's not that the information is there. I just think that people don't know where to go and get it. So Aunt Georgia Lee doing that website is something that is great for people of color, just so that they can feel like I can go to this particular website and look for other authors of color and try to find their books, because they think there is no lesbian African American authors, and I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh God.
Yeah.
So I was sharing in that room. So it's kind of crazy that people really don't know a lot about these authors. So that's my goal.
It is. I see that question pop up frequently, like in the different Facebook groups or whatever, somebody looking for a book written by POC or whatever.
Yes.
And just for the record, I think the website is QW.
Yes. I'm going to give the exact because I don't want to mess it up.
Yeah, I was going to say we'll stick it in the newsletter when we send out the newsletter for this podcast, but I think it's QWOC.com. But I think it's a fantastic.
It's QWOC Books on the Instagram, and that she has an Instagram page as well.
Yeah, so it's great work that you're doing, but also that she's doing, but definitely what you're doing and highlighting those, and just you're such a resource of information. Let's face it.
Well, I do a lot of like today I was up at 4:00 in the morning, already getting my stuff ready for next week, my content ready for the following week of new releases and different things of that nature. A lot of people just are not aware of the different authors that are out there, the different books that are out there. I'm in a lot of rooms and a lot of people really just don't know. So I try to give the names of different authors and even, authors of color or different indie authors, period. Like connect to these authors, read their books, just talk about it a little bit more. I think that sharing on social media was something that indie authors really need. They need you to get their books out there visually so other people can see it, promote it, talk about it. And plus, I'm not looking for anything for it. I just want people to know more about the sapphic community. I love sapphic books, and I just think it's not talked about enough on Book Talk and different things of that nature. So,
yeah, for sure.
Trigger warnings are a really hot topic in the book world right now. What's your opinion on them?
My opinion is that I think that we should offer trigger warnings to the readers just in case certain things have happened to them. Some people have had sexual assault. Some people have had domestic violence. Some people have had abusive parents. Some people have had suicidal experiences where they have dealt with wanting to pass away or not being able to deal with their life. So I think that we should give the reader, the opportunity to make that choice, just in case something may trigger them or may harm them from their prior experience. And I know sexual assault is like a big trigger for a lot of women. And I think sometimes people can slide them into books and not like put a trigger warning. I recently read a book where a child had been sexually assaulted by a group of people from like the age of 8 to 12, but there was no trigger warning in the book. So that kind of bothered me because it was a child. So I think that sometimes you have to give that heads up just in case. They may not want to read that.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing at the minute is the line between what is a trigger warning and what is just making people feel uncomfortable is really becoming blurred. And I feel like I wonder whether people are asking for trigger warnings when they're really not a trigger warning. Do you know what I mean? Like this can be huge. Like anything can like bring back a memory in a book. Like but I wouldn't necessarily put a trigger warning in for something like, and I'm more than happy to be wrong, for like a mention of infidelity, because to me it's just part of it is part of life. And I understand that people have difficult situations and memories to do with that, but to me it's not necessarily the same as a trigger warning to do with self-harm or suicide or sexual assault. Do you know what I mean? And I think sometimes people are more are blurring the lines between what is just something which they don't particularly want to read versus what is actually a trigger warning.
I think too, and I have always maintained this, that it really depends on genre. If you're reading a contemporary romance, content warnings are very different than if you're reading mystery or a dark romance or sci-fi, right? Hard sci-fi. Because in those particular genres, you expect certain things. And I think the majority of people are not just going to randomly pick up one of those books. Also, you can kind of tell from a blurb if it's going to be darker. But somebody's not going to pick up a mystery and expect it to be a contemporary romance. And I think that's too where some of the conversation lies, in that if you're writing a mystery, you expect there to be murder and sometimes sexual assault and some of those harder topics to be discussed. Whereas in contemporary romance, people don't always expect that. I have lots of opinions on content warnings and trigger warnings.
I think sometimes people just don't realize that they should have those expectations, or they don't know what kind of book they like. They might think that they want contemporary romance, and then they're like, but I want this and this and this. And it's like describing a completely different genre. So we'll have people in the book group or moderate and be like, I want a dark romance, but I don't want any violence. I don't want any like dubcon or anything like that. And it's like, we're going to have to, like, I'm not sure if you really understand what you're asking for.
I definitely do agree that with dark romance, I read dark romance because I want dark romance. I know that it's going to be dark. There's going to be elements of control, bondage, BDSM. And I think that does not bother me if I'm reading something that's truly dark, where there's someone who's dominant over the other person. As long as it's, it might not even be consensual. Some books I've read, it hasn't been consensual. And that didn't bother me either, because it was the genre I wanted to pick. So I do agree with you. If I'm reading dark romance or BDSM, I want to read that. And I know it's going to be dark. And if I read a dark romance and the two women were killing people, and I liked the book. I mean, it went along with the storyline. That's what they were doing. And it did not bother me. And there was a lot of, different things going on in the book, and it was action packed. There was elements of dominance, BDSM, control, all kind of different things going on, killing. But like you stated, I mean, if you're reading a certain kind of book, those things are going to be in those books. And sometimes I just want to read dark romance, or sometimes we just want to read spice, or it just all depends. And with certain genres of books, there will be certain things to make you uncomfortable. And I think sometimes I like to read books that make me feel uncomfortable. It kind of makes me feel like a masochist, a glutton for punishment. You need to read things that make you feel like, what is this? I've read books like that before. I think I read 2 books by author in the same weekend and drove myself crazy, but I liked it. So it all depends.
It's good to get uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's actually one of the things I talk to my therapist about frequently, is that if the world was more comfortable with being a bit uncomfortable, it would be a much better world, right? Because it makes us have to think about why we're uncomfortable and why, and then also question, and it plays into the ego of why our discomfort is more important than someone else's comfort. And I love being able to explore that with books, right? And just reading something that does make me uncomfortable or make me pause and have to think, and but I do also read as an escape. So sometimes I don't want to think. I just want to read the smutty goodness and just be done with it.
Yeah. My daughter.
That's not very nice.
Yeah. Well, sometimes reading a trashy book can it makes my day feel better sometimes, just to escape.
Yeah, for sure. So when you're reading a book that's heavy and raw and it hits close to home, how do you deal with that mentally? Or and in addition to that, are there any books that you absolutely won't read? Like, do you have any hard stops on books?
I don't have any hard stops on books. I've read all kinds of books. Like I've read books with all kinds of different trigger warnings to other people that probably wouldn't be able to read them. Um, I even read a book where they had a group essay in it. And I mean, some people couldn't read that. I think that um, there hasn't, if there's a book that has hit me close to home, I think it was a book Erin Zach she wrote. And it just, I don't know, she always like writes books that make me like feel a little bit too much, I would say sometimes. But she wrote a book that made me think a lot about my mother, and my mother has passed on. And sometimes you read books that and I think her I know her mother has passed as well. So sometimes when you read someone's book that has went through the same thing you have went through, you kind of feel like they see into your pain, some of the things that you've been through, grieving for a parent. Sometimes grief is not something that ends. It's just something you learn to live with, in my experience. So I felt like she understood that with that particular book, and I was like, oh, you know, she writes things that make me feel too much, and I really don't particularly care for that. But it's, you know, it's good to read books that make you feel. It can affect you. Sometimes I read books that make me cry, and sometimes that's good too. I don't think it's bad to cry or anything like that. I think sometimes it's good to feel. I think sometimes when I feel things and I do cry, I think it makes my reviews better, because I feel like I can translate it better to the other readers, that this is something that will probably stay with you for a while.
For sure. And as authors, we're trying to create an experience. And so to hear that, oh, I cried, oh, this stuck with me, that's what we're trying to do. And so it's a huge thumbs up to us going, yeah, you did your job.
Right.
You mentioned grief, and I know that in the past year you went through some heavy times of grief. How did that affect your reading? Did you pick up happier books? Did you stay away from topics of grief or death? Like, how did you utilize that?
Well, my grief was kind of back to back. I lost my sister-in-law the week of July 4th, and then I lost my daughter's father like 2-3 weeks later, and August 23rd. So it was back to back. So after he passed, I did not want to read. I went through like a transition of feeling confused. I didn't understand what was going on. And with his passing, it really sat on me heavy. I haven't felt that lost since my mother passed, so it had been some time. But what I did was I said to myself, if I need to read so that I am not focusing on this particular situation at this time. So I used my books as an escape, so that I wasn't dwelling on everything seeming to fall apart all at once. So I started reading again so that I could feel better, to feel happier. Focusing on the page, the review page, and reading books is what brings me joy. And so I turned to my books to not escape from it, but hoping that it would lessen the pain that I was feeling. I hope I answered your question.
You did, for sure.
You did.
Yeah, but I'm now wondering, sorry, Katie. I was just wondering whether there's a particular, whether you have a particular book that you go back to because you want to escape, or because you know that it gives you the happy feels, or do you not revisit books because you read so many?
I actually love all of Jamie Moody's books because she has like this Hallmark feel to her books. And I had been feeling like really down. And so I went back to reading her books. And I love all of her books, but I love one of her books. It's The Woman at the Mountain or something like that, where the woman climbs the mountain and her girlfriend were like apart and then they get back together. And it was kind of just a sweet story. She also has another book that deals with faith. And I come from a faith background. And so that book I always love as well. And I think that sometimes when you're feeling down or you're grieving, sometimes it's better to draw back to books that give you like a happy feeling. And unfortunately, I'm a girl in that sense, to where I kind of like cheesy Hallmark movies at times, like everybody else.
I'm just curious. You mentioned faith, and I have, being a minister, struggled to find books in the sapphic community that also deal with faith. There's a few here and there. And by deal with faith, I mean in a positive manner.
Right. Not being traumatic, not traumatic.
Yeah, and wholly within a positive manner, right? Or at least dealing maybe with some of the complications to it. And I recently got a message from another minister or soon-to-be minister who is writing sapphic and had the same comment that those books are actually really hard to find. So it's nice for me to know that Jamie has the one. Also, Jamie is just a very sweet person in general, if nobody knows
that. Jesus, I love Jamie so very much. She is a very, very kind soul. She's always been super kind to me since even before wasn't anyone giving me any books or anything like that when I originally started. She was always there to cheer me up and be there and stuff like that. You can't, even if you have a bad day, Jamie will find a way to make it seem like it'll be okay. And me and her were emailing back and forth a lot when I was going through the process of my sister-in-law being in hospice and everything like that. She was super supportive.
She's always good for a pick-me-up. If you ever need a pick-me-up, just send Jamie a message and say, I need a pick-me-up. No, don't do that.
Yeah.
I didn't warn her that was going to happen.
You have now until it's published.
Yeah, send her a message.
No, she's a very, very nice person, and I love her books. And her book about faith, I was very shocked about it. That me and her talked about both of our faith backgrounds and how we've struggled, with our sexuality and things of that nature. So it's nice to know that like you're not the only person struggling with that.
Yeah. We could have a whole podcast just on that.
Yeah.
What are some of the books you've read that's dealt with mental health and that you've loved and recommended to others?
Well, that's funny because your book, Broken, is one of the books.
I did not assign these questions, can I just say?
No. No, I love that book that you did, Broken. I think that like to love someone.
I can't actually.
Okay. To love someone with mental health, I think is I never thought about it in that way until I read the book of how difficult it can be to love someone that is struggling with mental health. And I feel like those characters loved each other. I feel like when you love someone beyond what other people or even society thinks is wrong with them or broken in them, and you still love them even beyond their brokenness, I think that is beautiful. Another book that I like is Donna Jay's Reflections. And it's talking about two different women. One woman is struggling to lose weight and one woman is skinny and struggling to gain weight. And it just talks about how as women, we struggle with how society sees ourselves and struggling with weight and struggling with being accepted and different things of that nature. I think that's something that a lot of people deal with. I have a daughter, so I know that like these younger girls, it's hard, to everyone you want society to, you look like a certain way, and the Instagram girls and stuff. And I had to tell my daughter, I say, when a woman has a baby, she doesn't, like, her boobs don't go right back up and then her stomach goes right back flat. Like, they had surgery, so it's like explaining these things to people. So those are the two books that I read. And also Diane J, she has a book called Memories, and that was with two women who lost their children, and they were like going through that situation. So I think that was a good book too, because I think I've been through different kinds of grief, but I think losing a child is something that is very hard to do, very hard to go through. So those are just a few books that I would recommend.
Yeah, well, thanks for putting me on the list.
No, I mean, I loved that book. That was one of my faves. That was when I read the question last night, I actually was like, oh well, I'm putting her book in there. She'll probably be mad, but she'll be okay.
It's a good job it's like 8:30 and really dark here, because I feel like bright red right now.
I was wondering, is your face on fire?
Yeah.
But just for the record, Amy did not assign which question to be read. Amy didn't even come up with that question. I did.
Yeah. This is an honest answer. I read the book. I love the book. And I love the two characters in the book and the way they supported each other. I think it was beautiful.
Yeah.
Maybe I can get a book 2 on them too.
I mean, never say never.
Yeah. Maybe.
So you've talked about grief and particularly loss when it comes to loss of people in your life. But can you tell us a little bit more about your journey with mental health?
Yeah. So when I lost my mother, I did go into a depression of sorts, and I went through a couple of years of that. But I did get therapy, and I think that sometimes, at least from the community I come from, everyone makes it seem like it's a bit taboo to like go talk to someone if you're in pain or if you're hurting. And I've always been, since I have gone through loss and grief, it happened to me as a young girl. I realized that just because you're hurting and you need to talk to someone doesn't make it bad or something you shouldn't be ashamed of. And so I got therapy and learned how to communicate, that I was struggling and hurting. And my wife is also a great support to me. And I'm able to talk to my wife and tell her if I'm having a bad mental day or a headspace day. Because unfortunately, with grief and with life, there's ups and downs. So you do have bad days. Even the strongest person has a bad day. So it's just dealing with those challenges. And I think the biggest thing that I have learned through the years is that just take it one day at a time. Tomorrow it'll be better. So that's how I think about it when I have a bad day. It'll be okay. And it's okay to cry. And it's okay not to be okay. I think that's another huge thing I've learned as I've aged.
Because you're so old.
Yeah, I'm getting there. The clock is running on me. I'm almost 40. I'm crying over here. I'm getting old, so yeah.
True millennial style right there. True millennial.
Yeah.
Well, since we're talking about grief, can you talk a little bit about how you deal with your own grief in midst of caring for others who are also grieving?
Sure. So in this past year with my wife lost her sister-in-law, and we also lost our daughter's father. We lost him. So in the midst of that, like my wife was really struggling, and we both were like struggling at the same time. But I had to be strong for my wife and for my daughter. My daughter's 16, and she lost two pivotal people in her life that has been there for her since before she was born. So that was it's very hard to see the two people you love the most in the world go through pain, and knowing that you can't stop that pain and you can't stop the realization that these two people are gone. So I think the way I deal with it is just I try to remember that supporting them is, it helps me also deal with my grief. So anything I could do, even sometimes people don't need you to say anything. Sometimes my wife just wants me to sit next to her and hold her while she cries. Sometimes my daughter just wants me to tell her it's going to be okay, and give them a hug or sit with them. Because I did a lot of that when my daughter's father died. I just sat with my daughter and she just sat in the bed with me, because sometimes you don't know what to say. And all you could do is just be there for them and let them know that you're there. So I was able to deal with my grief by being there for them and remaining strong for them.
It's a struggle to just because everybody processes grief differently. And so when you have one defining event, but multiple people grieving, because everybody processes it differently. So sometimes it can be really hard to have a meld of those processes without having extreme conflict and also hurting other people at the same time, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
It's a path that you have to tactfully walk, I think.
Yeah, because my daughter is she's someone that she'll cry, but she is not a big crier, so she holds more of it in. So she's not a cry. Whereas my wife, she's like very emotional. Like she wears her heart on her sleeve. So it all depends on the person. And me, I'm not a really big crier myself. So I think that everyone is different. And it's okay to feel like you don't know what to do or what to say. And sometimes you just sit there and you do cry. I did a lot of crying alone because I didn't want them to see me crying, because I felt like if my daughter saw me crying too much, it would get her down. And I didn't want that.
For sure.
Do you feel like you said that you went through therapy after your mother passed away? Do you think that process and like the therapy you learned to process from that, do you think that helped during this time? Because you had already grieved such a major loss before.
Yeah, I think that the skills that my therapist, I was struggling to sleep after my mother passed. And so my therapist, I was texting her all times of the night and everything like that. And she basically is the one that helped me to realize that hurting is okay. Not feeling okay is okay. And she taught me how to cope. And also she taught me how to communicate that I was hurting. I think the one thing I struggled with when my mother passed is I didn't know how to tell another person like yourself, like, this is what's hurting me. This is why I'm misbehaving, or this is why I'm not coming to family events because I can't get out of the bed. And so she taught me how to communicate to the other people, my family and friends around me, what I was going through. So this helped me because I was able to communicate to my wife and daughter what I was feeling, what my struggles are. And I think therapy is a good place. I think therapy is for me, it was a no judgment zone. I didn't feel judged. And sometimes it's good to talk to people that are not inside of your life with you, because they're looking from the outside looking in. I think sometimes it's hard to talk to people that's on the inside. They can make you sometimes feel bad about yourself or the situation. And so I needed my therapist at the time because my family didn't understand why I was struggling so much.
So we end every episode with 5 rapid fire questions. All you've got to do is think of the first thing that comes into your head and give us your answer. Okay, so you ready? What's your dream destination vacation?
New Mexico.
That was quick. Like that was like, I know I said quick fire, but that was really quick.
Or is there a specific place in New Mexico?
Puerto Vallarta.
Okay.
Because my wife has been there, and I have never been to New Mexico or even out of the country. So it's a place I want to go to with her, of course.
No, hon, I'm going on vacation. Bye. See you later.
Yeah. I don't want to get in trouble.
What trope are you, either in your relationship or you as a person?
Age gap.
Oh.
Yeah, my wife is 10 years older than me. So age gap. I love age gap romances because it reminds me of me and my wife. Yeah. I love an older woman. Always been my weakness, so.
So does Ames.
It's true. Where did you see kindness today?
My wife waking me up for work.
At 4 in the morning?
Yeah, she woke me up and told me you got to get up because she was like, you have your podcast today. You have to get up and get yourself going. So yeah, I was having a tough time getting up today.
Oh.
I don't know, if my wife woke me up at 4 o'clock, I wouldn't think it was so kind, to be fair, but yeah.
Yeah, well, it was. I asked her too. In all fairness, I asked her too. She did what I asked.
What's your philosophy on good mental health?
Doing things that make you happy. So, whether it be self-care, going to the gym, reading a book, taking time for yourself, sometimes sitting alone. So just doing something that brings you joy. That's what I think.
All right, and a perfect lead on then. So where did you find joy this week?
I found joy this week talking to my 90-year-old neighbor. His name is Al. He's a sweet man.
Oh. I love a good neighbor.
Yes.
That's because your neighbors bring you cake and food.
What was it? Persimmon muffins?
Persimmon and ginger muffins. The little girls next door brought them. It was so sweet.
Yes. It's always nice to be kind. It's free. It helps somebody.
All right. Well, that brings us to the end of our show. Yeah, so that's all for our latest episode of Bookish and Unbalanced. We would love to thank Alicia for sharing with us today, and we also want to thank our listeners for tuning in and getting to know Alicia. Be sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons to keep up to date with our latest episodes. Until next time, take care out there, and remember, we are all in this together.
Stuck to my pants.
Smoother than normal.
Oh, that landed in the cat's water bowl.
Oh.